prior to the commencement of this meeting in the following manner pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 231 of the Law of 1975, by posting such notice on the bulletin board in the municipal building and by email notification generated by IQM2 to the offices of the Independent Press, Bloomfield Life, Star Ledger, Patch, Bristonet, and Tap into Bloomfield. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Louise, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Mundell? Here. Councilman Joanna?
Here.
Councilwoman Cruz?
Here.
Councilwoman Davis?
Here.
Councilman Gamble?
Here.
Councilman Rockwell?
Here.
Mayor Venezia?
Here.
All present.
Okay. I see one person signed up for public comment, Kevin Lindell.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to compliment you guys for setting up the 9/11 ceremony at the Green. It was great. A lot of compliments, the 3,000 bags representing a lot of thought you could tell really went into that. So great job on that.
Thank you.
I want to talk a little bit about the homeless issue in Bloomfield. For years, we've had a homeless problem, even pre-COVID, and now it's only gotten worse. People sleeping on the sidewalks, alleyways, in Watson's Park, and the different parks. And they always seem to have this long commute into Newark for the shelters to get food or a place to stay. And they literally look exhausted. I mean, literally exhausted from the walking they have to do, collecting money, and not having a place to get food or stay in town, having to go to Newark. And it reminded me kind of where the town was before Bloomfield was created. People would trek into downtown Newark. This was a part of northern Newark. Eventually, we set up our own school system. We had our own post office, and the population didn't need to travel as far. And so we incorporated the town of Bloomfield in 1812 so that people could get business done here instead of having to rely on another town. And I think it's time, with some of these homeless, Omar, homeless since 1996, he was still homeless in 2019, I don't even know if he's still alive anymore. It's time for this town to take responsibility and provide a place for these people to stay, some food, maybe a shower, and get them back into the workforce without them having to trek 4 or 5 miles and then come back to sleep here at night with really nowhere to sleep. And it would do a world of good. I know other councils haven't acted on this, but we're in a changing world now. It's changing times with COVID and the social awareness that's been going on since with what happened with George Floyd. And I think it would provide a great service and a legacy if this council took action on providing a place for the homeless to stay, sleep, eat, get something to eat, and maybe back into the workplace so they don't have to go through this stress of not knowing where they're going to sleep and the constant exhaustion of walking miles every day. And that's what I've seen out there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Do we have anybody else here for public comment? Okay. Township Administrator.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have Director Flynn up to talk briefly about the waiving of construction and zoning permit fees for Sandy-impacted residents.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have a resolution on the agenda to waive the fees for zoning and construction fees. We have it right now till December 1st. If we could always extend that if we see it needed. Right now, we had about 9 permits come in for hot water heaters and boilers. I believe PSE&G had a list of shutoffs for about a little over 200 properties. So we're working with them very closely and, to get these permits done and inspections done so they can get turned on. And we have a couple documents on our website. If you want to go to the construction permits page under community development. And any questions, it's always the best thing to call us. 973-680-4053 is our main number.
Okay. Does anybody on the council have any questions, comments for Bonnie?
I got a question.
Yes.
Sure.
So the the permits, does it require someone come in to get the permit?
Well, what we do, we have, you can do the work as an emergency, on emergency basis, and then call us, say, you know, we're getting the hot water heater, it's gonna be an emergency permit, we're tracking that on a spreadsheet, and then come in within 5 days. We're not gonna be like beating people up, but just come in later and get the permit.
Okay. So I guess what I'd like to do is, you mentioned that you could get the forms and different things. Can we get something like on the main page that says, like, if you need, if you're in, you know, something that.
I
you
think
don't
we do
to-
have an
I think we did
item
put it on
On the
correct?
main
page.
page, yeah, we have a
okay.
hotline number on the main page, that if anybody calls the hotline number, we have somebody answering it that could refer anybody to what it is they actually need, including the building department, social services, FEMA connections, links. So that number is there, a hotline number for the community.
Thank you. The reason
Yeah,
I
I think
mentioned
there's
it
a
in
link on
particular,
the
because
main
there's a,
page. Sorry.
I know the issues around, people have had in the past issues with getting the permits and things like that. And I'm just thinking in this particular moment, that we've got people who lost cars, right? So it's just a lot that's
Right.
going on. So I'm very glad to hear you say that you're not beating people up, and if they don't make it in the 5 days, if they make it in, I'm assuming that means if they make it in 10 days, that might be okay.
Yeah, and they could mail it in even, because there's no fee, so.
I just want to make sure that, you know, when I've had opportunities to really interact with the people, you know, with families that have been devastated by that, I just realized how much of a burden it is.
Yes.
And that any way in which the township can
Right.
play a role in
Absolutely.
mediating that in some way, I think we
Absolutely.
should
We're
try to do
working
that.
as
Yeah.
fast as we can when we get, you know, a call or.
From an inspection standpoint, I know we have to inspect the boiler or hot water heater before it's done. Are we gonna be able to handle the capacity that?
I think so. I mean, like I said, we've only had 9 so far. We've had about 18 calls that we have tracked. And our inspectors go out immediately, and do a few at a time. I'm thinking
'Cause that
maybe
200 from
after the
PSE&G is
emergency.
gonna come hit quick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking after the emergency, kind of like getting everyone, you know, maybe the permits will come in after
Yeah.
that.
We'll monitor that and make sure
So,
if we
yeah.
need to
Yeah.
apply additional resources, that we don't get bogged down
Okay.
in that inspection process.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions, comments? So, Councilman
Just
Gaston?
one, I do know, in some of the areas, there are some people that aren't like really tech savvy, maybe senior citizens and things like that. I guess, how do we try and
So
address
if-
those specifically? Because I spoke with some people in really hard-hit areas, and they were like, you know, they were getting things handled and found, you know, the township very helpful, but then they were concerned about some of their neighbors that, you know, they're not really online, and they don't really get the information that a lot of us get, you know, through Facebook or social media or
Right.
things like that. So just, how do we try and, you know, target the people in those hit areas that, you know, it's similar to like snowstorms and things like that, the elderly, you know, like, is there something like a door knock or something for some of those people?
So, the first thing is they call that number, and, you know, we'll provide any service and help them through the process. We just talked this morning, as a matter of fact, with OEM about going out to the neighborhoods and knocking on doors in the harder hit areas, just to make sure that the people have what they need and they have access to whatever resources are available to them. So probably in the next couple of days, we're gonna put an initiative together to reach out for the people in the hard hit areas.
Great.
Like, when you said door knock, is that like a hanger thing you were talking about?
No, I mean, just like actually go.
Literally knock.
Yeah, we'll literally knock on the door and try and make contact.
Kind of thing.
I know with some of our inspectors, like right when it happened, did kind of canvass a few streets and did that a little bit, but we could, you know, ramp that up if we need to.
That actually, now that you say that,
Yeah,
that's
well,
actually not a bad idea.
Well, I was
Just
just
hanging
asking-
something.
PSE&G has been out there knocking, going door to door, and they're giving people info that you need to, when
Right.
you do replace your hot water heater, the town needs to inspect first, and then they need to come back before they turn on the gas line. So the PSE&G
Right, there was a
is
little
gonna do
confusion
that.
with PSE&G information, but we've streamlined
Yeah.
that, and everything should be fine now.
And also, they set up shop in Watsetson Park, a mobile command center for our residents as well.
Yep.
so.
On Pitt
And
Street
I
as
think
well,
they
in our
moved,
Pitt
Pitt
Street.
Street
yeah, they
lot,
moved to
yeah.
Pitt
Okay,
at this point.
all right. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to move this? Moved by Councilwoman Cruz, second Councilman Gamble. All in favor? Aye. Number 2.
Mayor and Council, Assistant Administrator Duva will present number 2.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. We're just asking for your approval to implement the additional COVID-19 policy that we discussed, which would require employees to provide proof of vaccination or undergo weekly testing.
Can I get somebody to move this?
I'll move it.
Moved by Councilwoman Davis, second Councilwoman Mundell. Do we have any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Number 3.
IT Director Latour.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is just non-fair and open for our mobile production truck to finally get it built out. This is the truck that we purchased several years ago, and the vendor is one of our current vendors. And as you know, a lot of things are now mobile, and there's a lot more demand for us to go out in the field and do some production work.
Okay. Moved by Councilwoman Davis, second Councilman Gamble. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Number 4.
Number 4 is an amendment to the Recreation Ordinance, fee ordinance to add 5 additional classes.
Okay.
I'll move it.
Moved by Councilman Gamble, second Councilwoman Davis. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. And number 5, Director DeMayo.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. On the Police Director's report for activity in the month of August, our complaints against personnel are currently at 37 for the year. That's compared to 36 at the same time last year. It's the first time this year that we have an increase. However, the increase is being driven by internal complaints that we're initiating on against our officers for policy violations. For the month of August, we had 6 external complaints total. 1 was at the scene where a motor vehicle summons was being issued by one of our African-American officers. A racial slur was mentioned to him. It was not handled appropriately by the officer, and disciplinary counseling is taking place. Complaint against an officer for demeanor on a suspicious person called. The officer had told the person it would be in their best interest to leave the area. The person felt that the officer had no business to tell them to leave and made a complaint for demeanor. After reviewing the body camera footage, the complaint was exonerated. 3, we had a demeanor complaint which was lodged against an officer. Once the footage was relieved, it was determined that the supervisor actually dealt with this person who, once we watched the video footage, it was obvious that the person was an EDP for about an hour and a half, and the person was just totally irrational through the entire thing. It occurred at the police desk, and so the officer, the sergeant, was exonerated in that case as well. We had another demeanor complaint. A woman indicated that she did not like the officer's tone. We looked at the body camera footage, and the officer was nothing but pleasant and through the entire encounter, and there was no issue with the officer's demeanor or tone at all. We had a suspect arrested for shoplifting that was captured on video, and the suspect insisted that it was an improper arrest. He shouldn't have been arrested, so the complaint was taken. However, that's still active, and once we review it by the board, we'll make a final determination on that, but the video is consistent with shoplifting. And number 6, we had a complaint by officers didn't arrest somebody for shoplifting. It was handled via a summons due to the small amount that was taken. It's still active right now for the second part of the investigation. However, the first part that deals with the shoplifting and the disorderly conduct, we've already watched all the body camera footage, and the officers acted properly and did what they were supposed to do. And as far as the demeanor that was indicated in the Facebook complaint, that the officer was rude. At no time were any of the officers rude. There was 2 supervisors and 4 officers at the scene. Actually, it was the exact opposite. They were being berated by the person who made the complaint with all kinds of slurs. We had an internal complaint for the month of August. We had one of our dispatchers was alleged to have made a racial slur within the communication center. We pulled the video footage from inside communications and the audio footage and determined it was accurate. I immediately suspended the dispatcher, and we're in the process of moving to termination. We had 6 early warnings for the month of August. Of the 6, 5 were false positive. 1 was determined to be positive, and the officers being placed into the early warning and intense supervisory system program. At current, we have 2 officers in that program. The first one that's in is scheduled in 2 weeks to be reviewed to see if he can be removed. We had one use of force incident by officers in the entire month of August. It was a female that was being arrested for domestic violence. She was highly intoxicated and combative through the entire incident. Actually, when she got back to headquarters, she again kicked a hole into the sheetrock in the wall as well. But no injury to her, no injury to the officers, and the use of force was certainly justified. We had one police pursuit. It was a wanted felony vehicle out of Newark. Officers engaged in a pursuit, but it was broken off by a supervisor almost immediately, just based on the time of day and that there was heavy traffic out in the field. Our motor vehicle stops for the month of August, we had 373 total, which is pretty consistent in average for each month. 108 of those stops were Caucasian, 113 African American, 130 Hispanic. Consistently, they're still being spread out evenly among the areas where we have heavy traffic, and they're spread out evenly throughout the different parts of the township. Total of 42 arrests for the month of August. Out of the 42, 40 of them were initiated by calls for service from the community. 2, which were DWIs, were initiated by police officers. Of those initiated by the community's calls for service, we had 3 aggravated assaults, 1 burglary, 14 shopliftings, which continues to be our driving crime, 5 simple assaults, 3 frauds, 1 criminal mischief, 1 possession of a weapon, 4 DWIs, 4 warrant offenses, and 4 for other municipal offenses. Our police-initiated arrests, like I said, were 2 DWIs. Total crime for the year is sitting at 368 Part 1 offenses as compared to 394 the same time last year. We're at a 7% reduction from last year, and then the report that I sent you all showing the 5 years, you can see we're still continuing that trend downwards each year going back from 2015. New initiatives, we've scheduled a workshop for our supervisors called Lessons in Leadership, Stand and Deliver. It's something that's hosted by a person named Steve Adebato. I've actually read the book, and I think it's going to be very good for our officers. It's a 90-minute seminar, but it's very interactive with them. So we're utilizing some of our forfeiture money to pay for the training and also to fund the overtime for officers that are off, for them all to come in, and so we can have every supervisor in the department in here for the training. Due to an increase in the overnight vehicle break-ins, which continues to plague us and all the municipalities throughout Essex County, for people leaving their doors open at night and leaving key fobs in the cars, I started sending the police officers out doing the same thing that the criminals are doing. Get out of the car and walk through the neighborhoods and check people's doors. And if they find doors unlocked, they lock them, they put a warning slip on the person's windshield, letting them know that they left their vehicle unlocked overnight. As of this writing, we were at 155 warnings issued. Now we're in excess of 200. And we're seeing that number of overnight vehicle break-ins start to drop. We're not doing it just sporadically, randomly anywhere. We're identifying the areas where the vehicle break-ins are taking place, and then we're targeting those areas by sending the officers in there overnight. Training updates. We had ERT active shooter training that was inclusive with the students and the staff at Bloomfield College. It was the first time we did it with students and staff, and it was really successful. It went very well. It was well received by the students and also by the staff there. Gave us an opportunity to get inside of all the buildings and really get a good footprint on what the buildings are like in case we ever do have an actual active shooter incident. We completed a training I spoke about in earlier months, de-escalation, train the trainer. We now have 3 members of the department who are certified to train de-escalation, so we no longer have to send people out. We can do it here in-house and make it part of our curriculum, our annual training curriculum. And we also sent 2 of our ERT members to the hostage negotiation school and crisis intervention school. Our emotionally disturbed person calls for the month were down quite a bit. We only had 4, which was down from 19 the month before. All 4 of them are handled by police officers with reports, and then being forwarded to Health and Human Services. And that concludes the report for the month. I'll take any questions anyone may have.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Director DeMayo? Okay. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Township Attorney.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. We're seeking your authorization to extend the 2020 Townwide Street Sweeping Services contract with the existing vendor and for the existing amount of money through October 31st of this year. The Township engineer has already publicly advertised seeking bids for the new service contract. We've received 2 bids. The 2 bidders have actually filed challenges against each other by letter, not lawsuits. So as we're trying to sort that out, the 2020 contract has expired, so the local public contracts law allows you to extend during that period until we sort this out and get it awarded. So this would be an extension through the end of October.
Can I get somebody to move this? Moved by Councilman Rockwell.
Second.
Second, Councilman Gamble. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, Township Engineer.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item I have on the agenda is asking for authorization by the Mayor and Council to issue essentially a request for qualifications to hire an engineering firm to do a thorough and complete analysis of the township's storm sewer systems in a way so we get a better handle on what's going on throughout the system. What I'm looking for is a little bit more comprehensive. We're going to look at a full mapping of the system, which we really don't have now. We only have a partial map. There's going to be field reconnaissance to confirm where catch basins, where outfalls, the pipes going into the streams go. Put that all essentially at some point into a GIS layer for our system. The main advantage of this is that once we have something like this, we can use computer modeling of different types of storms and scenarios to better understand. If there's areas, obviously we had a hellacious storm, we'll never be able to control that. But what I'm looking to do is look at the more frequent ones and even some of the higher ones to see if there's things we could do, whether it's resizing pipes, adding catch basins, or a whole combination of strategies so that we can try to get a handle on our storm system and ways to limit repetitive flooding that we seem to have. I mean, it could be anything from a storm that lasts a half hour that dumps an inch of rain, or it could be a storm that lasts 24 hours and dumps 8 inches of rain. They're big storms, but they're all different and they behave differently. So we really need to try to understand if there's things we can do to try to limit this situation. And with a good model and good data, we'll have a better chance. Very similar to what we've done with our water system, where we got really comprehensive mapping. We know where hydrants are in GIS. We know the sizes of the pipes. It gives us a better understanding as to how to deal with this, because obviously this problem isn't going away. It may just get worse as time goes on. I think it's a good time to, get on top of this and move ahead so we can be a little more proactive in these cases.
Okay. Can I get somebody to move by Councilman Joanno? Can I get a second? Second, Councilwoman Davis. Paul, I think this is great. Thank you for sending that article around. If you want to send it to the rest of the council, I think
Yeah,
it would
sure.
be good to send. I think this is definitely needed. These storms are becoming more frequent, and we have to adjust with the times. So I think it's good that we're doing this. So. Any other questions, comments? All in favor? Aye.
Okay, the next item, we received a 2021 local aid grant for Broughton Avenue. It was in the amount of $739,000. We're going to need to prepare bid specifications and construction administration. My recommendation is we try Brightview Engineering. They're our current engineering and traffic consultants. They recently performed the resurfacing of 4 of our streets under CDBG, did a great job, got it done pretty well, pretty quickly. So I would recommend we hire them to plan these bid specifications so we could actually get this started probably in the spring.
Okay. Moved by Councilman Joanno. Second, Councilwoman Mundell. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Township Clerk?
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. On the agenda tonight is another ABC transfer. This was a pocket license at 80 Washington Street and is being transferred to Bloomfield License Holding. Everything was in your packet, the background check from the police department, and everything is in order for your approval. And then it's going to be placed also at that same location at 80 Washington Street.
Okay. Can I get somebody to move this? Moved by Councilman Joanno. Second, Councilwoman Cruz. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Township Council, Councilman Joanno.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't realize Paul would be doing his presentation, but I'm very thankful that engineer Paul Lasik and our town administrator are working passionately to address, identify the issues that we have had over the last number of years. With longevity comes, I'd like to believe, some level of wisdom. And going back to '99 with Floyd, Irene in 2006, and presently with this storm, I guess I've heard multiple number of times, I've never flooded before. And my response this storm equals or far exceeds Floyd in '99. People who have never had water in their basements, who had never had any serious issues, have had it during this storm. And a brief global look. We've had 3 storm events, one at the end of July, one at the beginning of August, and the current storm. People have a tendency to want to compare, well, you didn't do it here, why couldn't you do it there? Well, 3 children, 3 different behaviors. The storm at the end of July was historic. In my many years, my decades here in Bloomfield, I don't know if any of my council colleagues, I don't ever recall Route 46 and Route 3 closing, having cars underwater. During that I left my house at 6:30. 30 minutes later, I had 3 feet of water at the end of the street. In 30 minutes, we had 5 inches of water. And I know the engineer, in attempting to deal with the widest scope, it's very difficult, these extreme weather events, to capture. But the key, in my head, to the residents of this community, we want to lessen, we want to mitigate. Whatever issues are there now, by doing the study, we need to have metrics, we need to have documentation. That documentation from an engineering company will provide us with a springboard to grant money, both at the state level and FEMA. You've got to support, you've got to have documentation. And the study that this township, this mayor and council, engineer, and acting administrator are going to provide will give us the opportunity in a very competitive environment to get as much money as we can for our residents. We're not alone. Everyone has this same thought. But with a mayor that's very aggressive and is able to, has good relationships with at the county, state level, and federal level, we're in a good position to have the best odds of tapping into those resources for this township. We go from the July storm of 30 minutes, which was havoc. People trying to get from one end of Bloomfield took hours. Someone trying to get home from Clifton, a 30-minute event, and it just totally, our infrastructure is not equipped to handle those kinds of dynamic events. Then going to a 30-hour rain event over a long period of time, approximately 5, 6, 7 inches of rain, but over 30 hours. And we were able to handle that, a slow and even pace of water. Our system can manage that. But with Ida, 8 to 10 inches of rain in a 5-hour period, there's probably very few ways we can construct to totally wipe out. That's not going to happen. That impression, don't ever believe that. But if we can reduce the impact on businesses in town that were decimated, the residents who totally, hot water heater, their total first ground level, lost washing machines, heating units, hot water heaters, I mean, major losses. So this study, and I applaud you, Paul, the administrator, and the mayor for taking the initiative to get this documentation in place. And look at our zoning and planning boards, how valuable that information is going to be for those boards to make the best decision. Do I allow a development or a building project in what I know is a high flood area? Because much of the problem over time in this area, as judged by the Army Corps of Engineers, has been development and redevelopment in flood zones, that continued development in those areas. And I'll end with a quote from Jeff Tittle from the Sierra Club. 1 acre of land that's developed and becomes impervious with a 3-inch rainfall, you lose 1 million gallons of water. And very simply, that 1 million gallons of water has to go somewhere. It may be in your basement, it may be the neighbor next door. So we seriously have to look at that fact of our municipal land use regulations at our level and the state level. Are we making the appropriate decision not to put people in harm's way? Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Administrator. Thank you, Paul Lasik.
Thank you, Councilman. I think one of the biggest things that, obviously, we got hit very hard, and we're going to have FEMA in town as well, helping residents out with applications. We're going to stay on top of things, but, one thing, when we were walking on the lower Walnut and Pine Street, one of the biggest concerns from the residents over there is that they're pretty much locked in with water surrounding them. So do we have with the situation with Floyd, they flooded, but it didn't flood the whole Pine Street. The whole street of Pine Street flooded. Is there any way that how we get residents in and out in an emergency for that area? That's something that we kind of should look at in the future as well. Because I know, especially with, there's no other way out of there. And if, I would guess at one point, police cars probably couldn't even get down there. Fire trucks maybe, but I would guess police cars definitely could not get down there. So that's something we got to look at in the future as we do this study. And so, yeah, that area definitely needs to. Councilman Joanna?
As we well know, those specific areas that are in the FEMA flood zone, particularly those along the Second River and Third River, are the most highly prone areas. And as the mayor mentioned, Pine Street, I can rattle off Hearthstone Drive, I can rattle off Lakewood Drive, and a few other locations that I personally have viewed, where at the last storm with Hearthstone Drive, there was at least, you could take a canoe, you could take a rowboat, go up and down from one end to the other. And the Third River is their backyards. And the three Morley, McLeod, and Meadow Streets, the first 30, 40 feet of each of those streets incurred serious water damage. That's how far the river came up. So we are simply, the destiny of this township is the Second and Third Rivers. And maybe, and I say maybe administratively, to look at Montclair, look at Clifton, and look at communities around us, we share the same pain, and I think there's greater leverage at all levels for funding if we put our heads together as a group and explore the potential. Because what we get in the Third River comes all the way down from the headwaters up in what was called Woodland Park, West Passaic. It comes through that area. It comes through Montclair, it comes through Clifton, through Little Falls, and then we're kind of at the tail end of it. And we bear the brunt of a wall of water that comes down. We're at the tail end of it. So we need to catch it further north, and that requires some collaborative working together. This is much bigger than a single community. This is a huge issue. But with money from the federal government, with money, potential state money, we could not have a better opportunity to move forward to make a bad situation less of a bad situation. The opportunity exists. I believe the passion exists with people in this room to make that happen. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Liaison reports.
Thank you. Couple quick ones. Our beautification committee is hosting the townwide cleanup on October 16th. We're asking that folks register by October 2nd. Registration can be found at tinyurl.com/2021 Bloom Fall Clean. It's being promoted around Facebook, and it was in the eBuzz and some other places as well. So we hope people can join for that. We are currently accepting applications for the Cultural Preservation Advisory Committee. Applications can be sent to me directly at my township email address, which is easily found on the township website. And we will accept those through October 31st. After we receive them, the subcommittee will review them, and then we'll be appointing probably in January. And then finally, Bloomfield will be launching its first farmers market on September 21st, which is next Tuesday. That's going to take place the 21st through November 9th, every Tuesday from 3:30 to 6:30 in the library courtyard. And if residents have a local business that they own a local business, or there's a local Bloomfield business that would like to have a table at that farmers market for one of the markets, they should reach out to me directly. We have community spotlight tables. We're going to waive the fee for one market each business, and we hope that it should be very good. So, thank you.
Anybody else? Liaison reports? Councilman Gamble?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a few dates that I just wanted to call out some programming. One, registration is now underway for the fall programming for the Bloomfield Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. This Friday is the outdoor family campout. I think there's a few spots still available if you're interested. Then the Fiesta Latina, the celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, is Saturday, September 25th. That'll be by Felton Field. It should be a fun event, arts, food trucks, music, so definitely check that out. The free fall concert series is also going to be kicking off soon. Tuesday, September 21st is going to be at Brookside Park at 6 p.m. It's going to be a Motown tribute band. Then on Tuesday, September 28th at 6 p.m., it will be at Wrights Field, and that will be Latin and salsa music. Then on Tuesday, October 5th at 6 p.m. at Vassar Field, there will be a Beatles tribute concert. And then the finale and fireworks will be at Foley Field, October 16th. Gates will open at 3 p.m. There will be an opening ceremony. New Power Soul will be performing at 6, and then fireworks at 7:30. Also wanted to call out that the tennis and pickleball courts at Memorial Park are now open. We were actually there a little bit earlier today, and our kids were showing us how to play pickleball. But it's fun. The courts look great, and so hope everybody can enjoy those. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else with liaison reports? Yes.
Just a quick update from Gardening Committee that the community gardens have donated 526 pounds of produce to date to community food banks.
Awesome. So we can, before we go into closed session, we have 2 action items. Let's handle that, and then we'll go into closed so we don't have to come back into open.
Mayor, before we
Councilwoman Mundell, number 1.
If I just want to make one recommendation to the safety director, if I could, real quick.
Go.
In terms of advertising the FEMA and the connections, we have those those large signs for speeding that we use. They're traveling billboards. Could we potentially use those in various sections of town for advertising contact information for residents? Just an idea.
I think that's an excellent idea.
If they're there, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Number 1, Councilwoman Mundell.
Mayor and Council, I have a resolution for the extension of 2020 contract for townwide street sweeping services. So moved.
Second.
Second, Councilman Joanno. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
And number 2?
Township of Bloomfield approval list for September 13th, 2021. So moved.
Second, Councilwoman Cruz. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Can I have a motion to go into closed session? Motion. All in favor? Aye.